Ladies and gentlemen, I'm privileged to be here on the first foundation day of the Chintan Research Foundation. Let me extend a special welcome to the ambassadors and senior figures from the government, the media, think tanks, and academia. The Chintan Research Foundation fulfills a very important need. For far too long, we have viewed global problems through lenses that were not ours. The narratives that define development, progress, and even crisis have often been disconnected from the lived realities of our own people. We believe it is time to change that. It is for this reason that the CRF must become a crucible for new ideas rooted in Indian realities and representing perspectives from the global south. The CRF must offer solutions that work not only in conference rooms, but in factories, farms, startups, and households across our nation. The CRF must imagine and reimagine the role that India can play in shaping the future, especially of the global south. The scale of transformation is required for India to realize the full potential and become Viksit Bharat by 2047 as envisioned by our Honorable Prime Minister. As planned, the CRF's research focuses on crucial issues like climate change, equitable energy transition, the evolving global economy, crucial supply chains and dynamic trade relations, and the overreaching geopolitics that shape the future of the world. For 3 decades now, the Adani Group has been driving growth and accelerating innovation by entering the toughest and the most critical infrastructure sectors of our nation. We see the CRF working on the same lines, entering critical areas of research, deliberation, recommendation, and impact, while upholding independence and editorial integrity. And we continue to foster the CRF as an institution where entrepreneurs and policymakers, trade negotiators and local innovators, academics and artisans all find a common cause. Here are a few objectives for us to collectively address. First, in line with India's stature as a thought leader for the world in a growing number of areas, let us collaborate deeply. Among the esteemed guests today, I see representations of major Indian think tanks who have greatly contributed to our country's growth, story, and systematic development. I would very much like to see the result of all of us working with each other. This will ensure immense value addition and no duplication of work. Second, let us move beyond Delhi. India is not just one city or one region. It is a chorus of diverse voices across geographies. The time has come to be inclusive by reaching out to Ranchi and Raipur, Bhubaneswar and Bhopal, to the northeast, to the coastal areas, and to the heartlands. Our work must extend to wherever our people are. Only then can we speak with authenticity and act with legitimacy. That is why the CRF must deepen its presence across regions. Conducting ground-level research, engaging with local policymakers, and arranging events nationwide. This will help regional priorities to surface. And then our job is to bring them to nation's attention. At the same time, our ambition must also cross borders and oceans. As the global south rises, we must offer policy narratives based on our growth experience to other developing countries. The world is looking for alternatives, for partnership based on equity, for voices that have long been unheard to now become central. Let us build that global footprint with confidence. In this context, I foresee that the CRF will soon engage with the diplomatic community to ensure fruitful and impactful dialogue with other countries. Third, let us remember that policy is not abstract. It is personal. Our chairman always says that growth must be measured not just by numbers, but by the lives we touch and help to improve. This too must be CRF's mission to make a difference and to contribute to India's rise that uplifts every segment of the society. Behind every economic graph, there is a weaver in Varanasi, a woman running a dairy in Gujarat, a student coding in Bangalore, a tribal youth aspiring for a fair chance in Chhattisgarh, and many, many more. The CRF's work must ultimately matter to each one of them. With this in mind, and while extending once again a warm welcome to all the senior government functionaries, I give you an assurance that the CRF will provide you with evidence-based research and expert insights supplementing your work and offer a platform for discussions and dialogue on the most crucial issues that policymakers face, asking and answering the hard questions. Absolutely imperative for India to enter in its next glorious chapter. While I foresee a huge responsibility for the CRF, I also have the conviction that Shishirji and his entire team have the capacity to take on the responsibility and deliver on it. My message to this team is to go forth, challenge and convene and communicate. Be bold in your analysis, but braver in your dreams. May your work reflect your intelligence, but also your integrity. Not just insight, but also impact. May Chintan lead to Kriya so that reflection turns into action and ideas become instruments of real change. Thank you and Jai Hind.
In the years to come, the Chintan Research Foundation will emerge as one of India's finest think tanks and will greatly assist and support all of us from government and the private sector to drive growth of India. Ladies and gentlemen, India is today a $4 trillion economy. The challenge is to become, as the Prime Minister has laid out, to be a $30+ trillion economy by 2047. This means that the GDP must grow over 9 times. The per capita income must grow about 8 times. The manufacturing sector must grow about 16 times during this period. And this would also mean that the country will have to grow at rates of 9 to 10% per annum, year after year, for 3 decades or more to be able to lift a very young population. Very few countries in the world have been able to do this, actually. It was done by Japan post-World War II. It was done by Korea later. And in recent times, it's been done by China, which set a scorching pace of growth for over 3 decades. I'm confident that this can be done by India because if you look at it in the last decade, India was a fragile 5 country. It's moved towards one of the top 5 countries of the world, and it's been able to do it because it's carried out very massive structural reforms in its economy. The GST, which replaced 28 taxes, cesses, it brought in IBC, it brought in RERA, it brought in ease of doing business, it brought in lowering the corporate tax rates, many structural reforms. It also pushed the limits of being a digital economy. 1.4 billion people in India have a digital identity. But more than that, today we transact over 50% of the payments, real-time fast payments in the world, because we've been able to integrate both the mobile number and the digital identity with the bank account. And everybody from a rural area to a women worker in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities, etc., all do transactions on mobile. And then you had a series of young startups, MobiKwik, Pine Lab, etc., who started providing credit on the basis of digital history. And then you had another set of young startups like Zerodha, Grow Upstock, which took stock market and wealth creation to Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. And then you had another set of young startups like GoDigit and Acko, who started providing insurance on the go, on the mobile, within 30 seconds to 1 minute. No other country in the world has been able to do this, what we do. And it's an open source, open API, globally interoperable model. And that is why the Bank of International Settlement said that India achieved in 7 years what it would have taken 50 years to achieve. That was the technological leapfrogging of India in many ways. The third thing that's happened in India is that in the last decade, we've built huge amount of infrastructure. It's a story of remarkable infrastructure building. We've built about 40 million houses, which is like building a complete Australia within India. That's more than the population of Australia, and we're building another 30 million houses. We provided toilets and sanitation to over 120 million Indians, which is more than the population of Germany. And we provided piped water connection to 253 million Indians, which is more than the population of Brazil. And the fourth thing that's happened in India is the story of going green. Most of us do not realize this, but India has built over 230 gigawatt of non-fossil energy. No other country has been able to do it, and we brought down the price of renewable energy from 25 rupees to just 2 rupees. And now we are taking renewable energy to crack water and produce green hydrogen with the ambition of becoming the lowest cost producer of green hydrogen, the lowest manufacturer, the cheapest manufacturer of electrolyzer, and the lowest priced exporter of green hydrogen to the rest of the world, and pushing for green energy in a very big way. You're seeing a war in Europe for the last 4 years. You're seeing a huge crisis in the Middle East, and you're seeing China saying that we'll annex Taiwan even if it requires a war. And therefore, you're going to see massive global turmoil across the world. So globalization itself, the period of stability which we've seen since post-World War II itself, has come to an end. Second is that the global supply chains, the period of trade expanding, the period of global trade lifting people above the poverty line, that has ended. The global supply chains have been disrupted, and you're seeing huge tariffs being imposed against each other. And you're seeing tariffs being used as a mechanism for revenue generation. And therefore, what you are witnessing is that WTO is dead, that the distinction between developed, developing and less developed countries has come to an end, and countries have started negotiating bilaterally. There'll be more bilateral trade, regional trade, etc. And the third is that you are seeing new productive forces of huge new productive forces of AI, quantum computing, robotics. All these will lead to a massive rise in production and productivity and transform lives of citizens. Without free enterprise, it will be impossible for India to grow at 9 to 10%, and that would require a change of mindset. It would require a change of breaking down rules, regulation, procedures, acts that we built over the years, dismantle them in large scale, and it would require think tanks who have the vibrancy, dynamism, and who can think out of the box, who are not status quoist, and who are based on hard research, and who are dynamic enough to tell the government that you are going wrong here. And therefore, it's good to have think tanks who can also be critical of government once in a while. I'm quite sure the government will not mind it, even if you're critical in a constructive manner. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that this Chintan Research Foundation has a very critical, very important, and a very significant role to play. If India has to become a Viksit Bharat, if India has to become a $30+ trillion economy, if India has to raise its growth to 9% per annum year after year, it will require Chintan Research Foundation to become one of India's key foundations, a key think tank, and guide India towards this very dynamic roadmap for the future. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Chintan Research Foundation, CRF, a think tank born out of Mr. Gautam Adani's vision that the future will not be shaped by the loudest voices, but it will be shaped by those who are willing to ask the hardest questions. And I think that's exactly the vision with which we have tried to establish CRF. We knew that the journey would be a long one. We knew that it would be challenging, but we also knew that in the end it would be very satisfying. At CRF, there's one thing we tried to imbibe from day one, and that is that the most challenging paths will lead to the most rewarding destinations. Again, something I'd learned from my association with Mr. Adani over the 1 year that I spent before we started this, that genuinely you must look for the most toughest path, not the most easiest. Which is why we are looking to place CRF at the confluence of 3 issues that we feel not only shape our present, but will define our future too. First, climate change. Now, we want to see within climate change how countries like India can also achieve their zero net emission goals without compromising their developmental aspirations. After all, 2047 comes before 2070. And we must not lose sight what we owe to the country and to the people, while again, not in any way diluting our climate change aspirations. So that's our one vertical. The second vertical was global economy and trade. After all, if I've spent 20 years in the WTO in Geneva, I need to have global trade as one of the verticals. But again, seriously, as India moves steadily towards its Viksit Bharat 2047 vision, there is a need to reimagine economic governance that supports self-reliance and inclusive prosperity. Very importantly, in this growth that we envision for the country, the private sector has a pivotal role to play, and we in CRF want to bring that role to the fore. And the third is international relations and strategic affairs. The shifting world order, which is marked not only by conflicts, but much more, I would say, by the emergence of the global south, and I think that is something we would so want to project within the work of CRF. These are important themes, no doubt. These are very, very important themes. But what's even more important for us is that we go deep into these themes. We go really deep into these themes and assess and analyze them from a strategic and developmental point of view. We will, and I promise this, we will not shy away from confronting the hard truths, and once we've confronted them, to try and find what best possible solutions we can offer. Chintan, the name of the think tank, means reflection. Chintan is reflection, not the lazy kind that we do in hammocks, but the more kind that we probably do in offices. But we want this reflection to lead to action. The reflection must lead to action. Action that leads to meaningful change, and change that leads to people-centric development. So it's a cycle. We want Chintan to action, action to change, change to development. But most importantly, and really I want to stress this as much as I can, most importantly, we in Chintan believe that it's your focus that determines your reality. You're focused and that is your reality. Nothing, there should be no bounds to what you want to achieve, and that's what we will do. In fact, in team meetings, I've more than once said that our job is to cut through noise, is to provide clarity, even if it means occasionally ruffling a few feathers. We'll do it. But when I look around in this room, and once again, a huge thank you for all of you for being here, I see many people, genuinely, I see many people who have made this journey possible. I see ambassadors who have helped me think beyond borders. From the day I started and the day I started interacting with a lot of you, you made the vision for CRF much bigger than India. What do we want to do ahead? One, we want to host bigger and bolder conversations in Delhi, across India, and on the global stage. Two, we want to publish ideas that challenge the status quo. Because we want to generate a platform where the future is not imagined as a reaction to global events, but as a proactive, strategic and inclusive journey. Three, we also want to convene very unlikely allies, diplomats and data scientists in the same room. We want to have policymakers and poets in the same room. We want to have climate critics and gender advocates in the same room. Four, we want to build a space where thinking, Chintan, is a tool for shaping a better and more powerful, inclusive, sustainable world. But above all, we want Chintan, as it evolves, to be a catalyst for change, for innovation, and for developing an impact. Let me conclude. Let me conclude by sharing with you that this year has also been a journey of very different reactions. I'd love to have your attention with this, because when we started many months ago, trust me, we said we are setting up this think tank, the kind of responses we got was, it won't work. There are too many think tanks already up there. In fact, there was one very dear friend, he said, either you're a born optimist or you're delusional. I happily took that as a compliment, because I'm not delusional, so therefore he's calling me an optimist. But after a few months, when we started taking some concrete steps, then the reactions were, oh, so-and-so is already working on this. Come on, guys, what are you doing new? So-and-so is already doing this. Fair enough, we still carried on with our journey. But I think the most satisfying responses have come to me in the last few days. And many of them from the same gentleman who made the earlier few comments, because this third, which I got in the last few days, was, why haven't you invited me to this dinner lunch? Well, it probably shows that we are in the first step to creating something tangible, something good. Ladies and gentlemen, here's to a future that's not just sustainable, but hopefully as prosperous and equitable. Let the Chintan begin. Thank you so much.